When it comes to shows like The Witcher, it's a good example as to why Hollywood writers should just follow the source material, because when they were doing that during the first season, or at least making more better efforts to follow the source material during the first season, it was a lot better received amongst fans as well as general audiences. But then when they started deviating from that in following seasons, you can see the audience scores slip pretty significantly. And this was exacerbated by the fact that they fired star Henry Cavill because, as a fan of the source material himself, he was insistent that they were more closely following it, but they didn't want to do that. So instead, they just decided to get rid of him. And this was pretty much confirmed by a former writer on The Witcher, Bo DeMeo, who said that the people working behind the scenes on the show were actively hostile towards the source material, even going so far as to say that they were just mocking it. And this is just kind of an issue with Hollywood in general when it comes to adapting stuff, because a lot of the writers don't necessarily want to just be faithful to the source material. They really just want to do their own thing. They ultimately want to tell their own story, but they don't have the creative bones within them in order to actually craft such a world. So they're just going to try to hijack something that someone else created in order to just to tweak it and make it their own. And this is something that author George R.R. Martin has said that he really just hates about modern writers when it comes to things that they're adapting in Hollywood. George R.R. Martin recently took to his personal blog to double down on his issue with Hollywood adaptations and screenwriters' attempts to make source material their own. Martin previously spoke out on this issue in 2022 during a discussion with fellow author Neil Gaiman, in which he lamented over the majority of the writers in Hollywood thinking they do not need to be faithful to the written works they're adapting for film or television. There is a bit of hubris, if not outright arrogance, on the part of these Hollywood screenwriters, because just imagine they're given a book to adapt for the screen and they take it and think like, well, yes, the author spent years carefully crafting their story, coming up with all the character motivations and making sure everything makes sense and doesn't contradict itself. But me and my fellow art school grad who have no real writing experience under our belt in a professional setting can come up with something better within a couple weeks in the writer's room. Very little has changed since then, Martin now wrote on his blog. If anything, things have gotten worse. Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own. No matter how major a writer it is, no matter how great the book, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks they can do better, eager to take the story and improve on it, Martin added. He goes on to say they try to defend this decision by pointing out that in adaptations, changes are going to be inevitable, especially when you're translating something from one medium to another, like from the book to the screen. Because yes, books explain a lot of stuff. In film and television, it's a very visual medium, so you have to translate, like, how would you actually be able, instead of just explaining something, you can actually show it to the audience. But that's not what George R.R. Martin is talking about. What he's talking about is the screenwriters changing the fundamental characteristics of the stories or the characters within the story in order to try to tell the story that they actually want to tell, that's something different from what the original author intended. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better, though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. Martin went on to praise the show Shogun and said that's an example of an adaptation done right. I never read the book, so I can't personally attest to how accurate it is, but from what I understand, it was pretty close to the source material with certain changes made. Some of them were just from the simple fact that they're adapting a book to the screen. Others were a little bit more creative, tweaking the timeline of events a little bit, changing certain character meanings and other things like that. But these creative changes weren't necessarily made with the perspective of the writers of the show thinking they can do it better than the original author. They were just doing something different, and it takes a level of humility in order for someone to actually accomplish something like that and do it well. Because just imagine for a second, you get a chef who makes a great dish with a set of ingredients and a recipe. It takes a humble person to be like, okay, if I want to create that, I need to follow the recipe using the same ingredients. But it takes a person of arrogance to think like, I'm going to make something better using the same ingredients. I don't need to follow the recipe, whatever. I can just use what they started off with and make something better. Because for that, this is called the Dunning-Kruger effect right here, which is kind of a phenomenon that measures a person's confidence in a given subject with their actual experience in that subject. So you get a new Hollywood screenwriter, they're fresh out of college, they got their job in Hollywood, their confidence is through the roof at this time, until they start working in the industry for a while, and then they start getting what's called the valley of despair, where they realize how little they actually know about screenwriting, until they start getting more experience within the subject, and then their confidence starts returning to them. Because too often than not, studios try to save money and they think writing is the cheapest thing for it, or an area that they can save money. So they're hiring cheap writers fresh out of school, have no track record behind them. So that's why they're all right here, and why you get a lot of stupid things like this where they're like, yeah, I'm going to get this adaptation, or I'm supposed to work on adapting this one thing, but I can do it better than the author, because they know enough to basically create a problem. They don't know enough to know how little they actually know about screenwriting. It takes someone of actual considerable experience in order to realize how little they actually know. Or maybe you can just have someone with natural raw talent, so they're just fresh out of school, but they're just naturally gifted and they are pretty good at it. But that's the exception, not the rule. Hence why George R.R. Martin said that 999 times out of 1,000, the adaptations are crap. But those are just one of the people who are just misguided when it comes to their skill set. You also get people that are misguided and also have their own agenda at hand, like the showrunners for the Rings of Power. This isn't necessarily just the writers of it. These are the showrunners of Rings of Power who had no real track record behind them to speak of, but yet they were given the reins to the most expensive show in history. I don't know why, but they were for some reason. And they also have their own agenda that they're trying to push with this. And this is something that audiences can pick up on when you're just trying to overtly push your own political ideology with some other person's work, because you think like, yes, I want to make a fantasy show that's pushing my own ideology, but something like that would never get greenlit or it'd be terrible. So I need to try to piggyback off of something that's more successful and try to hijack that in order to try to push my own agenda. Fortunately, audiences can pick up on this sort of thing and are rejecting it in record numbers, and studios are losing money by trying to do this. So the only other off-ramp for studios in the future, I mean, they're going to continue to try to push this sort of stuff, but eventually it's going to get to the point where it's not financially sustainable for these studios in order to keep doing this. So they're going to have to go back to actually being accurate adaptations of source material, or just create more original stuff that people enjoy. But one thing's for sure, if you're just going to try to keep pushing your ideology in other people's work and trying to think that you can just do what someone better than you has done, but better than them, well, then you're just going to continue to see studios lose money. But it is nice to see that other people like George R.R. Martin calling this out now. And I think this is something that we're going to see more people within the industry start calling out as a lot of these studios lose money in the future. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to like and share the video, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.